an acai bowl. Okay, enter broadcast. Here we go. Oh, we're there. Hi. And so you heard me making an aside to my daughter because I was supposed to do this with a different piece of equipment than her personal laptop, which she's using, but things happen. So anyway, I'm so grateful to be talking to Anthony Green live from the Netherlands. He is an activist, he is a composer and a pianist, and there's a lot more to that. So I'll let him talk a little bit more about himself. First of all, Anthony, so you started off with the piano thing. That was where you started, or were you always a composer in some way?
I definitely started with piano. I started to play piano by ear when I was 5. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the kindergarten teacher would play something, the old piano in the corner, and I would go and play the same exact thing behind him.
Okay.
And through conversations with my mom, and my mom would also take me to church every Sunday, so I would be exposed to the amazing church musicians there. Mostly the pastor's wife was unbelievable, but there were some other really, really wonderful pianists there. And through being a musician in church and being mentored by some wonderful, wonderful musicians in church, as well as my kindergarten teacher and my elementary school teachers as well, eventually I just started to take lessons. Everybody said that to my mom that I should take piano lessons. So I took piano lessons when I was 10, started when I was 10, played Debussy, Chopin, Beethoven, Bach, all of that. But while I was being heavily focused on piano, all of these other things happened, right? So I was the accompanist for the high school choir. I was the accompanist for 3 choirs at my church. I then played piano in the high school musicals. And then I led the vocal jazz group at the high school, which ended up being like an a cappella group. And I made arrangements for the a cappella group.
Okay.
I did arrangements for some of the musicals because we didn't have a full pit orchestra. So we would just invite some musicians and I would make arrangements for them. I went to chamber music camp and I started composing for my friends in chamber music camp. And I composed pieces for me to play as gifts for my family members. So I was always composing and arranging. Also, my piano teacher, my primary piano teacher, taught me quite a bit of music theory. And she herself had studied a little bit with Darius Milhaud. She took a class with Darius Milhaud.
Wow.
So she was super hip on contemporary music and she loved it. So when she recommended that I go to chamber music camp for the first time, the very first contemporary music piece that I played was a piece by John Deek at Apple Hill, the Center for Chamber Music in Keene, New Hampshire.
And how old were you when you, because you started at 10 and it sounds like you did a lot almost right away.
Yeah.
And you must have perfect pitch then if you were playing things like, no. So you would just pick things out, like you said, you would play exactly what the people were playing. So it was just like, you just figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, I have really good relative pitch. So as soon as I find the first pitch, then I can figure out what goes next.
Yeah. So I hate to interrupt, but so you went to Apple Hill. How old were you then?
My first time going to Apple Hill, I was 16. And that was when I played the John Deek, which was really, really crazy. That first time I played John Deek and Dvorak quintet.
Wow. So you must have been incredibly passionate. As soon as you start taking lessons, you must have been like just all over it.
Yeah, I was heavily devoted to music.
Yeah. So let me cut to one of your own compositions. So this is the conclusion of your piano concerto called Solution. And when was this composed?
Last year.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're really cutting to something that's very very, very contemporary. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something else?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope I didn't all right, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I should have saved this for after.
Yeah, set it up.
Today, the official recording of this piece just was released on an album called Strings and Hammers that you can find through Ravello Records.
Okay.
And it has music by some wonderful composers, including my friend Emily Ko. And the pianist playing this concerto, her name is Dr. Unmi Ko. Mm-hmm. And this piece was commissioned by Bob McCormick of the Robert McCormick Percussion Group. Mm-hmm. At USF in Tampa, University of South Florida. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the best performances of my life. The whole experience was really just life-changing. So
wow. So this is the perfect day to talk to you then. I didn't even know that. Wow. Yeah. Serendipity. Okay, so I'm trying to hit the right button to make this happen, and I'm getting at the moment it's not doing it for me, which is not ideal. Okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about your process in composing, and I'll see if I can find it on Vimeo, because it's Vimeo as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's vimeo.com/piargno.
Okay.
And I have quite a number of videos there, but definitely the clip is there. So when I was composing this piece, Bob McCormick commissioned me to write some piece for piano soloist and percussion ensemble. And he wanted me to conceive of this piece as a concerto.
Okay.
So I had a conversation with Dr. Unmi Ko, the pianist, and we were talking about the type of piece that we could come up with. And she told me that she was really attracted to my social justice artist practice. Mm-hmm. And so then just got into a really honest conversation about some of the injustices that happen, not only socially, but also within the classical music world.
Oh, yeah.
And she spoke very candidly about how, as a woman and as a woman from South Korea, sometimes she finds herself in these situations where she's not respected and she's not treated as an equal to her male counterparts. And this not only happens in the United States, but she tours quite often, and she feels this tension whenever she's traveling and performing. So the original title of this piece was Piano Concerto Tension, because I wanted to focus on the tension that she feels and this discomfort that she feels in such a masculine-dominated world. But when I started to think more about her story and about her as this powerful, talented, intelligent woman, I started to realize that she's still surviving and she's still thriving within this world. You know, she is an extremely gifted performer, and her talents aren't going to disappear anytime soon.
Right.
She's constantly releasing recordings. She's promoting music by Black composers. She's inviting guest artists. She works with living composers, and she does so much. So she herself is the solution to the tension that she feels. Her work and her continuing to be active and to produce and to create amidst all of the voices that are telling her, well, oh, you're just a woman from South Korea, you're an Asian that practices all day and has no feelings, right? These comments happen, but she just is not letting all of that bog her down or stop her, and she's just continuing. And so she's the solution to all of this tension. And that's why I renamed the piece Piano Concerto Solution.
Wonderful. Okay, so as you see me looking down, I've been looking for, I've got Vimeo, I'm looking for Anthony Green Solutions. It looks like it's not so I should be Piagarmo Solutions or Piagarno Solutions. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. Maybe I can play it.
Yes, why don't you do that?
Happen? Okay.
I hope so.
Let me see if I can play it.
Okay.
All right, it should start. Can you hear it?
No.
We'll try. And I think I might have to share some audio.
Yeah. This is really
Yeah, I have no clue how this
annoying.
works. I've never used
This is really annoying. All right.
Soundstream before.
Okay. I am going to try again with the way that I did it before with your page. In the meantime, though, okay, so we're going to go back a bit. So you are doing your thing with arranging for your friends, you're composing for your friends as well, and learning about these instruments, I assume, kind of on the fly as far as writing for all these different instruments, like, just trial and error, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so before university, I definitely just spoke with friends and said, "Is this possible? Is that possible?"
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
said, "This is possible, but that's not possible." Or, "You're writing for oboe, well, we should have some moments to breathe. That would be
Yeah, we're not
um,
a pianist. We
exactly.
yeah.
And you make so many mistakes, of course, when you're dealing with these things. But on the flip side, instrumentalists are usually really forgiving when they're working with composers. So
Yeah.
I've never really had any issues. Maybe I've had like one issue with a pianist, but that's another story. Uh,
Well, you're a pianist, so it's like if you can play it, they should be able to play it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
In
exactly.
theory.
That was a little bit of, well, I'm not going to get into that.
Okay, leave
But
that alone. Leave that alone. Absolutely.
I've had
Yeah.
an issue with a cellist as well, and lots of issues with oboists.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, before university, it was really just these conversations. But when you're studying composition, you get textbooks and lectures and demonstrations and workshops that where people tell you how to write for the instrument.
Hmm.
And there are quite a number of good resources now online as well, especially for extended techniques.
Hmm.
So then what happens sometimes is I'll go into a rehearsal or some sort of pre-performance and somebody might say, "Oh, this is not very possible." And I say, "Oh, well, that's because you're thinking of this on string 2 and string 3, but you
Hmm.
should actually reverse it." And then they say, "Oh."
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to be armed with that sort of knowledge. I'll need to get there at some point myself. Okay, I'm back on your page. If I press that picture, should it come up? It should come up, right? The audio clip
I
should.
hopefully we'll
Okay,
see.
let's try again. My phone just did some weird things, so I don't know if it's something with my phone because this is not bit. Oh, wait. Okay, it looks like it doesn't want to help me out. Oh, I'm so
Yeah, I don't.
stressed. This has never happened to me before. Usually I just do my thing and it works.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
okay though.
I want to
Maybe.
hear your music though. Maybe
Yeah.
we can find something on YouTube. I'll keep working on that while I talk. This is just a
Okay.
true test of my skills, such as they are.
Hold on.
Anyway,
I
hoo-hoo.
I think I know. I can do. I think I can do it.
Okay, please do. Please do. So, yeah, there you
And
are. Okay, and in the meantime, so let's see how much your brain can multitask. So obviously you went on to study composition, but you never lost your focus on the piano because you still perform.
exactly, yes. And I love performing. I love commissioning new works, and I as a pianist, I still perform works in the repertoire. My
Hmm.
partner and I also do four-hand works, which is really fun.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I also do more contemporary performances. So in these performances, I mix multimedia with movement, with experimental vocalizations, with audience participation, and with what I like to call sound-based performance art as well.
Okay.
So a type of piece that straddles the line between theater and performance art and composition.
Okay, so
Um,
here's what I see. I see Fighting Spirit. I see
yeah,
Sonata Exotique. And
yeah.
these are both 5 minutes. And those are the first two that come up. Which do you prefer? Let's see if this works.
Well,
Unless you found the other one. If you can do the other one, then whatever you want to do. If that's the one that is getting released, just guide me.
yeah. Can you see that I sent you a link in the
Uh,
chat?
um. Oh, okay. There's the chat, and it's not coming up. And I should.
Oh, it
Okay,
didn't. It
so
didn't pop up.
no, I think let me look for comments here. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, comments. Am I getting comments? I think it's because I didn't. I usually switch to the other format afterwards. Like in other words, it just goes friends, and they say you can't see comments, and okay. Okay, I'm public. It says public. Okay, let's try this again and see if I can see a chat. Oh, you figured it out? Okay, I see something. Okay, can we put that in the stream? Add to stream. All right. Let's see if we hear something.
Oh my God.
There's all kinds of, this is beautiful. It's like infinite.
Yeah, this is strange.
It is strange. Okay. So Anthony's screen sharing, because he's the one who has more tech knowledge, as you see. Now, okay, that's us.
Okay, stop that.
Okay. And shall I just pull up one of your other things? Okay, let's see.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So which one shall I do? Fighting Spirit or Sonata Exotique?
You can do Sonata Exotique.
Okay. And this is Anthony Green, pianist. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to be so mad. I'll be mad. Let's just be real. That's an excerpt of Sonata Exotique. Okay, finally we got to listen to some of your music. Yay! So it sounds like obviously you start off listening to music in a church. I don't know what kind of church was that?
Oh, it was a typical Black Baptist Christian church.
So you
Yeah.
started, I mean, because, there's some that are a little high church, so to speak, high, and some of them are a little bit more like rhythm based with a worship team as opposed to, more organ based. And then you started with that, and then you were doing musicals and things like that. And then you end up 10 years ago with the style of the Sonata Exotique. And somewhere along the way, you had someone who introduced you to Mio. So it seems like, is this like you have this journey that has all these branches at the same time? Like, do you still sometimes write things in a more sort of vernacular style, or have you kind of moved in the direction of things that are more contemporary classical in general?
Well, I try not to ignore all of the tools that are available to me in a toolbox, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, now I'm blanking on when I actually wrote the piece. It must have been 2018. Yeah, 2018, I wrote a children's opera that is about the history of the invention of the kaleidoscope.
Wow.
And yeah, and the children's opera is called Mr. Brewster's Invigorating Invention. And it won a competition from Opera Kansas. And when you hear that piece, it's just a completely tonal, bubbly piece that's meant to entertain children and to teach them about the history of the kaleidoscope and hopefully get them really excited about geometry and invention and science and a little bit of engineering. So this was what I call a STEAM opera: science,
Mm-hmm.
technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
Yeah.
And yeah, since then, Opera Kansas has performed it over a dozen times. And
Wow.
then it was picked up by a group called Opera in a Can that's based in Towson University. They performed it in collaboration with Annapolis Opera. And then some of the performances were obviously canceled because of
Yeah.
coronavirus. Yay, canceling everything.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But I mean, it seems to me that in this current climate, like suddenly people are very interested in Black composers, at least for the next few weeks. But it seems like you have found a way to, I don't know, you've made inroads anyway, like even before this moment came. And I mean, how did that happen?
I think it really happened because no matter how frustrated with myself or with the world or with classical music I was, I never stopped creating. There were moments when I would probably get maybe 5 performances in a year, and those were sketchy at best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in my downtime, I would say, you know what? I don't have a choral piece, so why don't I just write some choral music?
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up writing some choral music, and now those pieces are being performed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Castle of Our Skins also really, really helped me just keep active and not focus on how little I was being programmed during a
Okay.
really weird time in my life.
Yeah.
But
Can I interrupt
also,
you for a
oh
second? I hate to do this, but
oh
we
no,
haven't really talked about Castle of Our Skins. I
yeah,
mean, that was my teaser thing, is that you started Castle of Our Skins. And what is Castle of Our Skins? So why don't you
yeah,
talk about that?
definitely. So Castle of Our Skins was founded in 2013 with me and my friend Ashley Gordon, who is the current artistic director and an incredible violist. So we got together, we met during our masters at New England Conservatory, and Ashley played some of my pieces fantastically well, of course. And she was coming back to Boston, and I was about to move to the Netherlands. And she said, we should do something before you officially move over to Europe. But the thing that we had planned fell through. So we just started talking like, what if we made a concert series? What if we focus on the music of Black composers? What if we have a mission statement? What's this organization going to be called? Blah. 7 seasons later, we are
Yeah.
here and we're still active, right? So
Mhm.
we are a concert and education series organization, and we're dedicated to celebrating Black artistry through music. And through Castle of Our Skins, we've worked with historians, fashion designers, dancers, visual artists, spoken word artists,
Mhm.
culinary artists. We have some
Wow.
really amazing receptions.
I would love
We,
that.
we love to support local Black-owned businesses. We have commissioned Black composers, and we just launched our Shirley Graham Du Bois Creative in Residence. And we picked a wonderful, wonderful creative who is our first creative in residence, Tanya Radzwa Tarengwa. And we, because our physical programming for the spring has been completely canceled, we decided to do online programming and produce digital content. So we've launched the Poetry Nightcap series, we have a Founders Chat, we have, I gave a piano recital focusing on 19th and 20th century Black composers in the United States and Canada.
Canada.
And yeah,
That is awesome. Now,
well, Robert Nathaniel Dett. So,
okay, all right, because I was
yeah,
saying the only one I've heard of is Dad, but okay.
yeah. And we also have the Black Composer Miniature Challenge. So we had 18 submissions that are running from May to the first week of September. In fact, one of the videos was just posted today. Brian Neighbors, yeah.
Okay. So you've just found a way where, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that there was absolutely no path, but you know, certainly are hacking through some underbrush to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah. And everything was well received and well attended, or has it just been sort of a gradual audience building? Like the first year that you did this, you know, and obviously you didn't know what was going to happen, but was it well received from the beginning?
Yeah, Castle of Our Skins concerts are definitely well received. We get a wonderful mix of audience, some locals, some that travel from out of state. And of course, Boston is divided into different neighborhoods. And a lot of our programming happens in Roxbury, and sometimes in various parts in the greater Boston area as well. But usually we get audiences from all over Boston coming to our concerts, which has been really, really nice. We're grateful for the support.
So, I mean, you were talking about the performance art aspect of it. And, you know, some of the pictures, if you look on the website, it looks like you're right there in the midst of the performance art aspect. Is that something that, like, when did you first start being interested in that?
Yeah, so I've never done something like this with Castle of Our Skins. This has been mostly a solo personal project of mine. But when I was in Colorado, me and my friends, Nathan Wheeler, we were experimenting one day with our voices and recording the experiments. And through just playing around with him, I realized that I really loved ruining my voice in this way. So I ended up applying to interpret this piece by Mark Applebaum, and I was accepted. So that was really the first gig that I did. It was electronics and voice, and there was this very complicated graphics score that I interpreted with my voice and with body and movement and percussion and stuff like that. But when I was growing up, I always step danced and I played hand clapping games with my friends and stuff like that, right? So then in 2017, I was invited to be an artist in residence at the Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts. And this happened at the same time that a countertenor named Carl Alexander commissioned me to write a piece for him for this project called The Voice Project, where he commissions quite a number of young Black composers. So I ended up workshopping the piece that I wrote for him in Omaha at the Bemis Center. And from there, I started to look at some of my open ensemble pieces. I started to examine some pieces that I had performed vocally by Renee Baker. And then she also sent me one of her pieces called Rage, which can be interpreted piano, and I added electronics and a recorded spoken track to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking, I have all of these pieces that tell this story about Black people in the United States. So I
Mm-hmm.
put them all together and I
Mm-hmm.
created this performance set called Zoom In.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first time that I really conceived of this as a performance set was for a residency that I did in Hanover in Germany at Studio Ilka Teurich. And it was really then where I performed the set. She gave me some amazing feedback. She took amazing pictures, and there was a video document of it as well. And ever since then, I've been really focusing on this Zoom In performance set.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and this sort of brings to the activism, or, I mean, I don't know, is it, I've never seen it. Is it something that has a message other than documenting the history and letting people kind of see what, I mean, can you describe it to me? Like what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So the collection of pieces, they're all quite abstract, actually. The most explicit piece is a piece by Darian Donovan Thomas called Kid Gunner Brother. And this piece, I also commissioned him to compose the solo version of this piece for me. He had already composed this piece for two people playing a hand clapping game.
Oh, wow.
And through conversations, I asked him, you know, I really love doing step dance, so can you just make a step version for it of that piece for me? And he said, sure. So then I recorded that piece at a residency in the Gettysburg National Military Park.
When we
And
missed each other not too long ago.
exactly last year, really.
Yeah.
And it was that's when I think that's the last piece that I added to this whole performance set, but it really started to draw everything together. So within this whole set, I have Renee Baker's piece called Kindness Recitation, which focuses on lynching.
Mm.
And it uses as a foundation this poem by Melvin Tolson, which talks about this white judge who's sitting at a bar and he's thinking heavily about how he sentenced a Black man to be lynched just so he could gain a higher seat in as a judge, you know. So in this piece, I actually imagine myself as the man in the tree, and Renee Baker's abstract scores are projected behind me, and I imagine those images as the last images that I'm seeing as I'm dying. So this piece it takes quite an emotional toll out of me when I perform it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't honestly prepared for that toll the first time I performed the piece. But it's also a really great starting point for audiences because they're uncomfortable while viewing the piece, and they have quite a lot of questions afterwards. So in these Q&A sessions, it turns into a chance for me to talk about my own history and my own experience in Black history, but it also gives them a chance to see a little bit of what Black people go through on a day-to-day basis, you know. So that piece was really the staple of this set, along with the piece that I wrote for Carl Alexander, which is called Empathy 1 Diamond Reynolds. And that focuses on the shooting of Philando Castile. Diamond Reynolds is Philando Castile's girlfriend, the late Philando Castile's girlfriend. Right. And the piece is all from her perspective.
And is that an instrumental piece or?
No, that's solo voice.
Solo voice. I was wondering. Okay. Yeah.
Solo voice.
Okay.
You could say that there's movement involved whenever I perform it. I just can't help but move along with the vocalizations. But I didn't intentionally compose movement in the piece, but whenever people perform it, there's inevitably a strong element of movement. So yeah. And then the set also has Rage by Renee Baker. It has an improvised step dance that I do to represent Black survival and joy and resistance. Then I do this performance piece that I call evocation. And I take balloons and I blow up the balloon, and then I write names of Black people who were shot fatally by police officers. And I have the audience read every name. And then when I'm done blowing up all of the balloons and writing the names, I pop the balloons one by one.
Well, that must be a long one now.
Yeah,
it could go on for quite a while. You must have to edit actually at this point.
Yeah. I only sometimes I pick 7 names, sometimes I pick 13 names. The names also change depending on my geographies.
Yeah.
I turned this into a durational performance called Temporary Resuscitation, which it stripped myself of the musical element, because when I'm doing this in my Zoom in set, I hum songs that you would typically hear at a Black funeral. But when I performed the durational piece in Berlin, I got rid of the humming and I focused on the names and the movements and just the contemplation of these people's stories and lives. So for that set, I picked about 35 names, and that took 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a really...
That must have been draining for you.
Yeah.
And them. I mean, wow.
It was the most difficult thing that I've ever done in my life.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, in the course of trying to do this, you say you're doing it in Berlin, and you are documenting the Black experience in America, and so obviously you don't live in America. I'm sort of saying, is there a bridge between the fact that you've been documenting this experience and the fact that you've left the country, or is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't necessarily contemplated that, but what I do think about often is how when you leave the United States for a significant amount of time, it puts you in a place where you can examine Americanism and what that means for you. Baldwin talks a lot about this. When he left and moved to France and traveled Europe and lived for some time in Switzerland as well. And then he returned, and he talks so powerfully about how leaving the United States forced him to confront what it means to be American,
Yeah.
And I think maybe Baldwin and myself, we may have come to different conclusions for certain aspects. But, my partner is Israeli, and he's also living away from his country. And he every day reads the news about what's going on in Israel. And I every day read the news about what's going on in the United States. So we're both politically tied to what's going on in our birth countries. You can't really get rid of this tie because you want to wake up and you want to read the good news, but there's just so much crap that's happening.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that the crap is overwhelming, and I try to get out those feelings in my practice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose that's, to me, throughout this period, having some sort of musical focus, whether it was practicing piano or creating things. Obviously I'm oriented in that direction, but I don't even know how people stay sane if they don't have that. I mean, I guess they listen to other people's music and that helps keep them sane. I don't know. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, you said that Baldwin came to a different conclusion than you did. I mean, what conclusion have you come to?
Well, Baldwin speaks a lot about when he found other United States citizens in Europe, he immediately felt this connection. And I honestly haven't felt that.
Okay.
At least not with every United States citizen that I see in the Netherlands or in Germany. But for the most part, I'm the one that avoids those places where the expats hang out, and
Oh,
I think I think it's honestly a little bit weird. I have tried very, very hard to learn as much Dutch as possible and to live as a local. And when I'm in Germany, I try my hardest to speak as much German as possible and be respectful of the culture. And I'm not saying this to like deny myself, but I also think that like this isn't where I was born, right? So
so
I
you're not
should.
trying to impose your Americanness as Americans tend to do, which is that they go, I mean, when I was teaching at Florida A&M, we had a trip to Spain for a choral festival, and all the kids wanted to do was find Burger King. And I was like, you're in Spain. When are you going to be in Spain? Eat some Spanish food, do something Spanish. But all they wanted to do was what was American. And I'm like, come on. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, the whole idea of like trying to be respectful of the culture. I mean, do you find that you feel more accepted? I know that there have been historically times when like Josephine Baker and these different people would go to Paris and they'd be saluted and whatever. And I always wondered, was it because there were so few of them that they didn't feel like they were tipping the scales in any one particular direction and they could be accepted because of that. But I mean, what do you feel? Because obviously imperialism came, I'm not saying that no other nation besides European nations went around conquering other nations. I mean, certainly, but I mean, imperialism is very much a part of Europe's history. And so I'm not there. So I don't know. How do you feel? I mean, as far as racism and that acceptance or not?
Yeah, it's a complicated situation, right? Because in many ways, especially in the Netherlands is such a liberal country compared to the United States, right? So in the Netherlands, they believe in things like good infrastructure and health insurance for everybody and cheap produce. It's really strange for me when I tell my family, like, I just bought 3 balls of fresh mozzarella for €5, right? It's like better than any of the mozzarella that I've ever bought in the United States. Not to say that there's bad mozzarella in the United States, but if you find the good stuff, it's probably around $15 for the ball, right? And I always just get surprised at how much money I just spend on food when I go back to the States. It shocks me, honestly. I spend €3.50 on a really good bottle of Bordeaux. That's my life here.
Bordeaux's not that far away, but although I mean, I think that was one of the things that got hit with a tariff. I think wasn't it wine or something like that? Yeah, but I mean, but you're finding that as a Black person. I mean, I have a friend who lived in Denmark, a Black American who lived in Denmark, and on one level, there were things about it that he thought were very good. On the other level, like we took a ferry. I visited a few years ago, and he said, you watch, they will pull me aside as we come back from Berlin off this ferry, and they won't take, and sure enough. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I was about to say that Europe doesn't have immunity towards racism. No place does.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was traveling on the train to Bern to perform my Zoom In set, I bought a first class ticket because it wasn't that much more expensive than the second class. And I was the only one who was asked to provide a passport and some form of identification. And I was the only Black person in the car, And little things like that still happen. I sometimes get weird looks when I'm in certain areas of Berlin. And I don't know if that's because of my skin color or because of the clothes that I wear. You can never really tell. But these conversations are also happening in this during this time. George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd has sparked this international wave of questioning, and Europe, fortunately, isn't immune from this questioning.
That's good, because I saw today on Facebook someone asked the question, could this be the end of white supremacy? And I'm not thinking so, but I mean, my hope is that in, having this flood of conversations and this flood of people saying, oh, wow, yeah, this really isn't cool. Maybe you guys aren't just whining. that something sticks. It's not just like a reconstruction thing that, okay, yeah, that was bad. We got to do something. And oh, wait, too much is happening. We need to just put that genie back in the bottle if we can,
Yeah.
It feels maybe like it would be different. So I asked another friend of mine who lives in Europe if he would ever imagine himself moving back to America. And I'm going to ask you the same question.
I don't want to. The thing is, I didn't expect to move here.
Okay.
So
how did you end up there?
it was love, really. My partner got this fantastic job in the University of Leiden in the medical center. Okay. And I'm a composer. I can live anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted to live outside of Europe. So it just ended up being the best thing for the both of us. Mm-hmm. And
outside of America. Outside of
exactly,
America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even though the first 3 or 4 years were quite frustrating professionally, I always had Castle of Our Skins because I moved to Europe the same year that Castle of Our Skins was formed. Mm-hmm. And I've always had the support of my partner, and eventually the career started to happen. So I did residencies, people started playing my music. I was invited to be part of Gaudiamus, which is a big festival here in the Netherlands. Now I'm doing this wonderful fellowship in Berlin, and Castle of Our Skins has blown up. My solo performance career has grown. So things are like now going into the right direction. Okay. So I would say that as much as I don't want to move back to the United States, mm-hmm. I also don't want to predict the future. Right. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I could also end up moving to China or moving to Antarctica or moving to Mars. Like,
okay, I wouldn't do that.
But COVID happened, right? And we didn't expect this. So
nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. That's very true. Yeah, because I have to say that, of late, it's not that I wasn't aware of the history, because I've always been aware of the history. And, you see these things that don't really get reported, and people getting harassed, killed, whatever. And but until recently, it wasn't constantly in the back of my mind that, oh, I'm going for a walk with my son. I wonder if someone's going to see us and decide to shoot us, And it's like, I mean, in my neighborhood, people were familiar, and but I guess I didn't go for walks as much before. And it just never leaves my head now. Is that, like, what if some person with a gun decides we're doing something, or just is feeling hateful on that day and decides they're going to figure out some reason to just pluck us off for no particular reason,
right?
And it's not even irrational to think that way, unfortunately.
And one of the scariest aspects about that is, the when police shoot Black people and basically get away with it, there's a body cam. Mm-hmm. But we know, for instance, with Ahmaud Arbery, mm-hmm. That case was almost dropped. Trayvon Martin also was almost dropped.
And
so,
in the end,
yeah. So if you were just walking, I remember distinctly once I was walking in East Greenwich, in Rhode Island, of all places. Mm-hmm. And I went down this really small street and I saw some pickup trucks, and I got this real feeling of discomfort. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I could think of is, if somebody saw my Black body in this oddly white street, and they shot me, how long would it take for someone to discover my body? Mm-hmm. That's what I was really thinking.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I remember once walking down a street of Chicago, and there was this Black couple in some sort of SUV, and they were arguing, and I felt completely safe, right?
Okay.
And I was just thinking, like, if I were white, I would, maybe because of all of the systemic racism, maybe I would feel unsafe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was this strange kind of role reversal moment that I had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I don't think that there's any group, race, whatever, where everybody is safe,
yeah,
or any group where everybody is unsafe. So I think that, to me, that's always been like the goal of we shall overcome. As far as overcoming is that, okay, we have the wide range of humanity. If someone is Black and they committed a crime, they're just a person who committed a crime who happens to be Black, as opposed to a representative of the whole race. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I get so furious with this thing about, oh, George Floyd, whatever, his background, whatever, and all this sort of stuff, as if, or every time someone is shot, it's like, well, they were probably high, or they, there's always this,
Yep.
whereas you have Seth Rogen being, the open stoner kind of thing, and no one's saying, well, they should shoot him because he's high, or
Yeah.
you have all these redemption stories of somebody who, and that's the thing that Hollywood loves. Like, somebody was running with a bad crowd and they turned themselves around and now they're whatever they are. And, that's great, unless you're someone like George Floyd. And then it's like, well, asterisk. Yes, he was murdered brutally, but asterisk, so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at the president and his background, right?
Oh, I don't even want to.
Like, how could a Black person who has been a proven sexual abuser, who has said horrible sexually provocative things on tape
about his children,
and about random women, who defended keeping the Central Park Five in jail and like spent a lot of money posting an ad about it in a magazine, who has rejected a whole racial group from living in his buildings, thing after thing after thing after thing. If a Black person did this, do you think that Black person would ever have a chance to be president?
Well, they wouldn't be anything. I mean, certainly nothing like that. But then, they couldn't go through their whole life. It would be very difficult for them to go through their life with that degree of privilege to even be prominent enough to be a household name, in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, the double standard is, I mean, it's glaring and it's frustrating and infuriating. And, I mean, I think what's happened lately is that a lot of us who maybe have some privilege in our background, because, my dad was a dentist and my mom school teacher. And, I actually grew up in Western Canada. So, I've been in the States the vast majority of my life now, much more than half. But, but it's like, I mean, you're just so over it to the point that it's just obvious. I mean, I haven't been someone who always tried to make people feel comfortable. It's like, okay, I'm the one Black person in the room. And so, I want to make sure people feel that I'm accessible. I'm just me, I'm just whatever that happens to mean at that time. I'm not trying to antagonize you, but I'm not representing anybody but me on some level, if you know what I mean. Like,
definitely, you don't code switch.
I don't have to do anything, and I don't have to code switch with if I'm with Black people either. I'm just
exactly
the way I speak, whatever that happens to be. But I mean, you get into these situations though where I don't even know why I started saying that. Oh no.
It's fine. It's fine.
Middle-aged. I had a point, but it's gone. Oh well. The point is, I don't know. Anyway, I guess we just try to live our lives as best we can. Oh, did you see the point? You're gonna help me?
I'm not sure if this was your original point, but we were talking about privilege, right? And
right. Oh, I'm being through with everything. Just not even, Yeah.
Exactly. I remember growing up and being in some rather uncomfortable situations. In fact, I was in an uncomfortable professional situation in March too. And, when you are trying to navigate these situations and these spaces, you have to critically think, especially when you're a creative artist and there's not so many opportunities and not so much money. You have to think, do I speak up and risk that next gig, or do I speak or do I stay silent, right?
Yeah.
And there were many times in my past where I've stayed silent. But the thing is, I'm going to be 36 at the end of this month, and I've out-aged lots of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to an age where I can actually afford to speak. And
Yeah.
age sometimes, like, when you are of a certain age and you've had a certain experience, it does afford you a voice, right? And this is another kind of horrible thing that happens in the classical music world. You know, young students get abused physically by their teachers. They get abused emotionally by their teachers, but they know they can't say anything because that might get kicked out of the studio, make them get kicked out of the school, make them lose that last year of funding, right? Like,
or the connection that maybe that teacher is powerful and they have that connection. I mean, that's been yeah. But I think that some of this younger generation, having a daughter who is 23, I think that this current generation is a little bit less concerned with that, you know, holding their tongue. At least for now, you know, and they're kind of through with it too.
Yeah, and I think that's out of necessity, but it's also a little bit out of frustration, right? The younger generation has properly scolded certain generations for not setting up economies and governments in a way that supports them.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest examples of this is Greta, you know.
Yeah. Who unfortunately
Flint. Oh, sorry.
No. You cut out for a second. You cut out for a second. So I hear you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Greta and Little Miss Flint and all of the climate activists who are saying, like, it's not our fault. We're the children, and y'all were brought into a world where these atrocities didn't happen, but you should have kept the ball rolling so that when we were born, these atrocities still didn't happen. And now I'm going to grow up with horrible air, horrible drinking water, etc., and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and I'm worried because that is completely on the back burner now. Like a local store that was not going to have, oh no, where is Anthony? I'll just keep talking. Hopefully he'll come back. A local store that was going to have nothing but recyclable bags, and suddenly, you know, the plastic is a thing because nobody wants to touch something that somebody else has touched. Oh, I think I've lost him. All right. Well, there he is. Hi. I don't know what's going on, but here he is.
Yes.
Okay, let's get rid of that, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back. This has been, you know what? Yeah, exactly. Every other one I've done, this is the test. There's always a test somewhere, right? Yeah.
Always.
Yes. Well, I mean, I was going to wind it up soon anyway, because I've taken almost an hour and I know it must be rather late where you are.
It's just 10:30.
Oh, okay. Yes. Late is a matter of depending on what you're doing. And I have to admit, I've been staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning every day now that I don't have to get up early. So
yeah, like, why not, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it makes me feel like a vampire, not a human, but that's okay. So other than this recording that's being released today, I mentioned that again, of these, they're all piano works or
No, they are works for a soloist and percussion ensemble orchestra. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Emily Coates' pieces for contrabass and percussion ensemble orchestra, and my pieces for piano and percussion. So yeah.
Okay. So other than that release, in the midst of this weird COVID world, what do you have coming up?
So much stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, give me a quick rundown. Go for it.
So there's some stuff that I just can't say officially, which is, you know, fine.
Okay.
But I am writing a piece for 2 saxophones for the Vex duo, and that will be for a project next year. I'm also writing another piece for 2 saxophonists. One of them is Nathan Mertens, who is in Nebraska, and that piece will focus on the whole concept of being queer and how to represent that through music. Okay. I'm writing a piece for Stephen Drury, the pianist at New England Conservatory. I'm also writing a piece for Dr. Unmi Ko, who is the soloist in Piano Concerto Solution. And this will be a rather fun piece. I still haven't settled on a title, but I think it's going to be called I Am Going Mad Libs.
Okay.
Because I made a Mad Lib for her to fill out. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm kind of excited about that piece.
Yeah.
I'm also composing a piece for my fellowship in Berlin, and that's a mega major multimedia piece that's based on the story of Harriet Jacobs, who was a 19th century formerly enslaved woman, and on her way to freedom, she spent 7 years living in a crawl space in her grandmother's attic in Edenton, North Carolina.
Wow.
So that piece is called It Must All Be Done in Darkness. And
Hmm.
that line is taken directly from her narrative called Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl.
Hmm.
Um,
So yeah,
and
you have to stay up late. I mean, there's
yeah,
no choice. Only so many hours in the day if you're working on God knows how many. I mean, how do you keep them all straight? Is there like, okay, today I think I'm going to work on this tomorrow, or it's like I'm going to work on this for 2 hours, or I mean, how does that even happen?
if you have the answer, tell me.
Somehow, by any means necessary. How about that?
Yeah, Malcolm X. Yes. So yeah, on top of all of that, there's my projects with Castle of Our Skins.
Yeah.
I'm commissioning some pieces as well. One from an amazing composer named Forbes Graham. I'm also uh, being part of these interviews and panels. So earlier today, I was part of a panel called Educating the Post-COVID Vocalist, and we focused on anti-racism in your performance practice. And that was produced by a group called Women on the Verge in Canada.
Okay.
And then in August, I'll be part of another panel produced by the Wellesley Summer Festival.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so never a dull moment. You know, I found that actually I've not had a dull moment either, and it really has been helpful. I'm
Cool.
grateful for it. So, well, thank you for giving me some of your time. And you know, I thought it was precious before, but now I know how precious it truly was. And you know, just the best of luck with all these wonderful things. And you know, I'll be looking out for your recordings and all the wonderful stuff you do, and hopefully if there's an Irvine situation in a couple of years, hopefully I'll see you there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really wonderful.
yeah. Well, all the best. And Anthony Green, composer, activist, everything, vocalist, all kinds of stuff. Very best. Have a great rest of your evening, and God bless. Thank you. All right. All
Ciao.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.